Hi, welcome to the World Financial Symposium's Market Spotlight webcast series. Today's focus is on M&A and HCM and workforce management. I'm Justine. I would like to
Thanks, Justine, and welcome to all of our guests and especially our esteemed panel of experts. We're very pleased to moderate this event today with WFS. Our agenda includes some introductory comments followed by a report from one of Quorum's research experts on HCM M&A activity, and then we'll follow with our panel discussion featuring Steve Sikora, Nova Obama, and Ed Colby. And at the end, we'll have a Q&A session, so I hope all of our participants will take advantage of the Q&A window to offer your questions to the panelists or other participants here. If we don't get to all of your questions, we'll try to do our best to get to those after the session is over. Our goal today is really to identify and discuss growth drivers and disruptors in the HR space, HCM space, and what are the emerging technologies and what are the factors that are creating value in small company technologies, teams, domain expertise, revenue models. Really examine how the larger players are driving the consolidation efforts here and what are some of the growth opportunities that are triggering this M&A activity. If I look back, we've been deeply involved in HR, workforce management, M&A. Over the years, we've probably done 25 deals. It's been a very active and productive space for us. Back in the early days, we were really talking about payroll solutions and timekeeping deals that drove most of the activity. And then gradually we saw the emergence of HR beyond payroll, kind of starting with employee self-serve and manager self-serve apps early on. And then, of course, the dramatic expansion of web-based solutions and software as a service. And now, of course, we're seeing the rising importance of mobile and even social applications, extending access and functionality much more broadly. And, of course, a variety of new applications that are greatly extending HR's reach into the enterprise. Some of those specialized applications are listed here beyond the core HR benefits and payroll space. Everything from talent acquisition, recruitment, compensation management, of course, performance appraisal, onboarding, training, learning management, workforce management, scheduling, expense management, and many, many more, almost an endless list that are creating many opportunities for emerging companies. And so we continue to see a lot of strong M&A activity across virtually all of these sectors. And to kind of give us an update on some of that activity, I'd like to turn it over to Amber Stoner, who is a senior analyst here at Quorum, to talk about the current market. Amber?
Thanks, Ward. First, a couple of quick notes before we delve into the details. Unless otherwise noted, all numbers are from January 1st, 2012 through June 30th, 2015, as they're broken out by half year. HR deals include workforce management, even though the workforce management deals have also been separated out to better highlight them. And these classifications, HR and workforce management, refer to the target of the deal rather than the acquirer. Also, there is some ambiguity in the definition of workforce management. It has traditionally been defined as time and attendance and scheduling software, along with solutions that directly relate to those two things. Kronos is a perfect example of a workforce management solutions provider. We're using a definition of workforce management that includes solutions for recruiting and retention of employees, as well as related solutions that also fall under talent management, blurring the lines between workforce management and talent management, and extending into what has typically been considered human capital management. With constant consolidation within the market, the sectors are starting to overlap so much that it's difficult to put a company into only one sector. Now that we've got the clarifications out of the way, overall HR deal volume has stayed fairly steady with a dip there in H2 2013, and workforce management deals have ranged from approximately 30% to 60% of the total HR deals. Over on the disclosed deal value side, that increases to a range of 43% to 71% of the deal value coming from workforce management deals. 3 mega deals, which I'll talk about in a bit, pushed the total disclosed HR deal value to incredible highs in both halves of 2012 and the first half of 2014, relative to the rest of our numbers. Taking out those mega deal values leaves us with a steady total disclosed HR deal value between $500 million and $1 billion, with the exception of 2013 when deals were happening but deal values simply weren't being disclosed. What's interesting is that the breakdown of total deal value into number of deals by transaction size indicates that most of that deal value is from multiple deals of less than $100 million, which is good news for sellers, as that means that you don't necessarily have to be over $100 million in revenue to be considered an attractive acquisition target, and it doesn't mean that valuation multiples for those deals are smaller. For example, in October 2014, Cornerstone On Demand paid $42.5 million, a 7.8 times revenue multiple, for employee recruiting SaaS provider Evolve. With that said, PE buyers typically do deals with valuations that are lower than those of strategic buyers. And speaking of PE buyers, our top private equity buyers of HR companies by deal count are the usual suspects: Riverside, Vista Equity, and Francisco Partners. In fact, the top buyer there, Riverside, is one you sold a workforce management company to a couple years ago, right, Ward?
That's right, Amber. Yeah, this is one of my favorite deals. This was a 100% software as a service solution built from the ground up, never a hybrid solution. They were growing rapidly and very profitable, and they attracted a broad range of both strategic and financial buyers. They solved a very complex problem for the public utilities market. It's called crew call-out. And it's really the task of assembling repair crews to go out and deploy the right equipment and the right people to remedy down power lines and things of that nature. So it's really quite a challenging application. It cuts across, integrates with HR systems, and also has to navigate the complexity of union rules. So a great example of a small company being very successful in this market.
Yeah, that was a great deal for both the buyer and the seller. As far as top PE buyers by deal value, 3 of those top 5 were comprised of one deal in which a public company was acquired and taken private, and all of those happened in the last 12 months. In October last year, HG Capital paid $175 million, a 2.3 times revenue multiple for workforce management, optimization, and scheduling software provider Allocate Software. Vector Capital spent $268 million in February for Saba Software, a provider of HR management SaaS solutions, including employee training, performance management, learning, and assessment management solutions. And Francisco Partners acquired mobile workforce management company Click Software for $438 million, a 3.2 times revenue multiple, in April. Moving on to the top strategic buyers by deal value for both HR and workforce management, keeping in mind that HR includes workforce management deals, the top 3 buyers for both are the 3 mega deals I referenced earlier, and they are Oracle's $2+ billion acquisition of Taleo at a 6.2 times revenue multiple in early 2012, IBM's nearly $1.4 billion buy of Connexa at a 4.1 times revenue multiple in August 2012, and SAP's estimated $1 billion purchase of Fieldglass at an 11.8 times revenue multiple in 2014. SAP is the only one of those 3 to make it onto the leaderboard of top strategic buyers by deal count, tied with the corporate executive board, Paychex, and Xerox with 3 deals each. Acquisitive Kronos is tied with John Wiley & Sons at the top through the first half of 2015, but Kronos just bought the AutoTime division of Cobble Workforce Solutions a week ago, expanding its reach into a number of verticals, including education, manufacturing, and healthcare, and giving it sole possession of the top spot on the leaderboard. Intuit did 4 deals, placing it solidly in the middle of the leaderboard, and while most of those deals were in benefit and payroll management, it did reach into the workforce management space earlier this year, picking up contracted workforce management SaaS provider Playbook HR. LinkedIn also added to its existing portfolio in March with the acquisition of Careerify, a provider of employee recruiting and retention SaaS solutions. Finally, in a deal related to Nove's upcoming presentation, employee wellness program SaaS provider Limeade, based here in Washington State, made its first acquisition in June, getting fellow Washingtonian company 9slides, a provider of employee training SaaS solutions. We at Quorum expect that this is important to things to come as software companies continue building tools that allow employers to help their employees improve their health and well-being, leading to a more engaged and productive workforce. Back to you, Ward.
Hey, great. Thanks, Amber. Yeah, lots of great activity and some very high valuations and a lot of players out there that are looking for solutions and continued acquisitions in this space, so very optimistic going forward. Now I'd like to move to our panel of industry experts. What I'd like to do is ask each panelist to offer a brief introduction of your background, and then we'll follow with your comments on some of these drivers, trends, and disruptors that you've identified. And let's start with Steve Sikora, who is HRIS Director of IGT. Steve?
Hello, everybody. I am the HRS Director of IGT, or International Game Technology. We are a $6 billion manufacturer of slot machines, online gaming, and also running state and government lotteries around the world. We have roughly about 13,000 employees right now, and like I said, $6 billion in revenues. I've been in the HRIS practice for almost 20 years now. And I've spent my career implementing value-added solutions mostly at small to mid-sized companies, and then, more importantly, maintaining those solutions after they're in place to make sure that they're applicable to the users. I've used a wide array of HR technologies, and I'm an HR information professional as certified through IRM, and also a certified Scrum Master from a project management standpoint.
Excellent. Thanks for that intro, Steve.
So what I wanted to go through first is the concept of everything as a service. And really, right now we all hear about SaaS, software as a service. There are, in the background, some other things going on called infrastructure as a service and platform as a service, which isn't so, well known right now as the software as a service, because everybody wants to outsource the software piece. However, where I see things going is next for HR is this concept of platform as a service. And you can see this in various different areas right now. SAP has something called HANA that is coming out as a kind of a platform as a service where you can build extensions to what their software is through this platform. And additionally, Oracle has its own model, and so does Salesforce have its own model. The infrastructure as a service, I think, is something that takes away a lot of the overhead for companies. I don't want to specifically focus on it right now because I really think the disruptor to the technology is going to be the platform as a service. If you have a platform as a service, you can then do apps and extension development, and through this, you get a rebirth of the best of breeds. If we take a look what's happened with mobile technology over the course of the last 10 years and the introduction of the iPhone, what you end up with is a platform in iOS or a platform in Android, and all these applications being developed at a low cost to the users, but based off of those platforms. And I kind of see that's where a lot of HR technology is going to, and business technology, and that's from that standpoint. A company, if they can develop an application for one of these platforms that is a better performance management, a better recruiting tool, or whatnot, but seamlessly integrates into that core HRS or that platform backbone that is in place, then you're going to start getting a startup culture for these various different apps that hit these platforms. And it will be mobile everything. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about what you can do. The rule book has been broken, and people can start developing apps in the same way that they're developing apps right now for iOS and Android. And then the one big other thing that has to be in place for that is to have accessible standardized data. So with a platform as a service, what you need from this platform is rules and segmentation of data. And if you have these rules and segmentation of data and defined, building out those applications to the platform backbone will be very simple to do because everybody's working off of that standardized data set. And when you have a standardized data set, then big data analytics takes another step forward. I know we've all heard a lot about big data analytics right now, specifically HR analytics or workforce planning and analytics. Where it really takes a big step forward is when you have availability of more data, and that data is in a very similar format so that it can be compared together. And you can imagine the power of a platform service such as an SAP or an Oracle being able to provide out to their users maybe mass data and various different other things or mass data that can be benchmarked by other companies that are using their same platform and being able to pull that together. Right now, there are plenty of different ways people are pulling big data, and the other thing that might end up causing is a review of data privacy. Is data privacy going to be a big issue in the future? I think that it is, but I think it's one of those things that it will fold under the pressure of the demand of consumers. So I'm going to this next slide here where I've kind of modeled out what platform talent management might look like. So you have your platform backbone in that light blue with the standardized data. And then the various different colored items you might have, for instance, the time entry, the payroll, and the HRS admin might be purchased from that platform backbone company, the same company, and it's that core data. But you might find an application in LMS that better serves your needs than the one that the platform backbone provides. And same thing with total comp and performance management or recruit and hire. Or the other thing is you can start developing your own apps towards that standardized data and the platform backbone. So that's one of those really big things that if we get to that platform backbone the same way that we have with mobile devices, will cause a big disruption in the HR technology industry. I don't know, Ward, if we wanted to take questions now or if you wanted me to go on to my next item on of my disruptors.
Why don't you go ahead,
All right.
Steve, and we'll actually take questions at the end.
Okay, sounds good. So the next item that I have as a disruptor is the gaming culture that kids are growing up with today. And from a Jane McGonigal TED Talk that she has online, and I've got the link to it on the slide here, she states that the average young person today in a country with a strong gamer culture, which the United States would be, will have spent 10,000 hours playing online games by the age of 21. If you can imagine what that means, that by the time that they are 21, they will have effectively worked full-time for 5 years playing games. It's crazy how much time and effort that the younger generation, the millennials, are putting into gaming right now. And what that means for the culture is something completely different. What people will be looking for is ways to collaborate, ways to solve problems. They're really getting better ideas or better ideas on how to collaborate with other people online. They're getting better ideas on how to solve problems. And there are games out there right now that are specifically geared towards solving the world's problems. Unfolding DNA, solving the world's oil crisis. There are all games out there that are trying to help us solve those problems. The other thing I wanted to get away from is the term of gamification, which is my second point here. And gamification a lot of times focuses on points, badges, and leaderboards. Points, badges, and leaderboards go so far as to deliver a game mechanism to various different things that you're doing. But if you don't have that engagement in the actual game without points, badges, and leaderboards, a lot of times these things can become demotivational as well as they are motivational. If you imagine that, in a culture or in an engagement software where somebody has scored, 1 million points on the leaderboard, they're at the leaderboard, that may disengage other people from using the system because the other person is so far ahead. It's nice to do recognition, nice to give points and different types of recognition and reward programs based off of this. But I wouldn't want people to focus specifically on points, badges, and leaderboards because I think it's kind of vapor in the sense that it doesn't motivate the way that people really think that it should motivate. And then, as I explained a little bit earlier, there are real-life gaming applications to solve the problems of the world and experience situations and environments you would have never had the opportunity to experience otherwise. So there are kids out there right now, or adults even, playing games to understand what it feels like to live in on a poor salary. There are various different types of games out there that give users or players the experience of something that they would never experience in their life and give them a little bit of insight and empathy towards the rest of the world and those who might be different from them. So I think that's going to foster a lot more tolerance in the gaming culture. And with that, that is my 2 points on what I think are going to be disruptors.
Okay, thanks, Steve. That's fascinating. I really enjoyed those comments on gaming, and maybe we can get back to you afterwards with a couple of questions on that. Now let's flip over to Nov Omana. Nov, are you there?
Yep. Thank you very much, Ward, and pleasure to be part of this panel session. My name is Nov Omana. I'm the CEO and founder of a firm called Collective HR Solutions. We are a HR technology evaluation and implementing firm. I've been in the industry, as you can see from the gray hair, a long time. At least I haven't gotten totally bald with the perspective. But I'm very pleased today to kind of take a little bit of a twist, and Steve, you've set me up very nicely in terms of the platform as a service and so on, to lead into a couple of things that I'm hearing directly from my clients. So, for example, HR is being charged today to be the culture agent within their organizations. I think the C-suite is recognizing that the workforce continues to drive the business, and as a result, the ability to be competitive, collaborative, and, if you will, very, very much ahead of the game, if you will, is coming back to the culture. So I'd like to speak a little bit about a couple of factors that I think are kind of that HR-ish perspective and how the technology is helping to move that along exceedingly quickly. So let's talk a little bit about well-being. So well-being, what we've seen today is wellness programs, which have not necessarily been new, they've been around for quite some time, are making a tremendous comeback. But what HR is trying to now couch it in is no longer a wellness program, but rather a well-being program. And they're recognizing that it's not driving healthcare costs downwards as the whole objective of a well-being program. It's quite opposite, the idea of becoming much more concerned and providing environments where your workforce is going to really be very, very productive, very engaged, and, if you will, very much into working with the organization. So we're finding that the well-being perspective is a very holistic view of the mental, physical, emotional, and financial health of the workforce. And we're starting to see a couple of plans that are now including things like legal aid and financial aid. But what's sitting behind all this, and you've perhaps even experienced it in your own world, is portals where your wellness programs are being offered. What was traditionally a small cadre of vendors who are simply pushing out content to people who are in the wellness programs has now become a full-fledged collaboration suite where both individuals are collaborating with one another, trading, if you will, recipes, nutritional plans, scheduling walks together, team competition, all the things that Steve had mentioned about the gaming, if you will, the badging and the recognition, all find themselves inside of these portals, along with the idea that I can look to various types of plans that are being tailored and personalized for me, the individual. If I'm a single person without a family to worry about, I may be looking at certain types of wellness benefits that are very different from somebody who's got an entire family and dependents to look at. So organizations are recognizing that the fastest and the most competitive way to offer these well-being programs is to simply open up a portal, so the technology is there supporting it, and give these people the access to the various vendors. And in all honesty, what's interestingly, it doesn't make HR a profit center, but it's certainly reducing the cost, is that many of these benefits are of no cost to the employer. They are simply a pass-through from the individual to the vendor themselves. But it is through the idea that technology is allowing that link to happen that it allows these employers to offer a wide benefits. Things like discounts to theme parks or whatever the case may be. So, like I say, that portal technology and that ability to offer these plans is becoming exceedingly competitive. Now, all of this points to the other thing that Steve had mentioned earlier, and that is being able to offer this on a portable or mobile platform. So, again, we're seeing a lot of applications going mobile. They are not simply pushed to the mobile platform. They are truly being optimized for the mobile. So I'm not able to scroll across a wide screen on a small phone. It's quite the opposite. And they're designed to be very, very interactive and very, very accessible. And the real key to many of these well-being programs is all about the 24/7. What employers are trying to do is create behavioral pattern changes through the well-being programs so that people can take it upon themselves to care for themselves 24/7. So the programs extend to dependents and family, in some cases to the community that these people live in. So I find this an extremely hot area, and as Amber had mentioned earlier, there's at least one acquisition that's happened there. I think we're going to see this as a very active area, as you're seeing a lot of vendors who are offering the portal, the content, and if you will, the delivery vehicles, the recognition components, the collaboration, all of those slowly but surely coalescing into a couple of select vendors doing this. So let's go to the next subject of engagement. And again, not being an HR practitioner, but actually a technologist, I always ask the question, I think I'm sorry, my apologies. Changing workforce. That was the next slide. Sorry about that. So the changing workforce, we've heard the generational differences. We've certainly learned that the population in the age bracket for retiring continues to grow, and those people want to come back to work. For the first time, we're finding 4 or 5 generations in some cases in the workplace. And what is happening is that we are seeing a growing number of people moving from the employee status to a contingent workforce. And a lot of the HR systems that we have today are not geared necessarily to both track to and, if you will, continue to motivate, measure, and, if you will, continue to retain the contingent workforce. So we're seeing some significant changes, and you will see some of the acquisitions happening in this arena where contingent workforce types of programs and software are going to be absorbed into the larger ones, the Oracles, SAPs, and so on, who do that well on the back end, but not real well on the front end. I'm seeing a lot of brand new vendors who are gearing themselves very directly to the recruiting of contract workers, and that's a really, really hot topic these days. We're also finding that the employment terms are changing as a result of the workforce contingent ratio, and so the idea of being an employee with full benefits and a work schedule and all that stuff, and we're watching jobs change from jobs to projects, and projects are being now, if you will, packaged up and sold as I need a team of X people for this long doing Y, and that's really what I believe we're going to see in terms of the changes. The technology today is geared very much to the job. I think people are starting to scramble in the recruiting world to recognize that the contingent workforce, as they're changing to be a larger population of the workforce, are going to have to start changing the manner in which they're posting these jobs or these projects and that. And if you will, all of the perspectives around what it means to employ somebody. I'm going to make a little bit of a prediction. I'm going to call it like an eBay of workforce with an Angie's List behind it. So the idea that you're going to have contract workers who are bidding on certain projects and have a referral network and if you will, a review network that says we're really good and here's why, and here are all of our testimonials. So this makes a huge, huge change in the technology landscape as we see it. I'm waiting to see who's going to step to the forefront in those deal acquisitions. Either a niche player will create something and they'll be absorbed, or one of the big guys will start to go out and build that. But I want to kind of leverage a little bit about something that Steve had said earlier about the gaming situation and the world collaborating to solve problems. We're finding that crowdsourcing is exactly where things are being solved and collaborated upon. So it makes sense, I think, to the technologists out there to start looking for ways to collaborate with the contingent workforce where they can pair up as teams and actually, if you will, bid for jobs and show up as a team in these projects as a contingent workforce. So we're seeing a tremendous, tremendous change in the workforce recruiting, retention, selection, payment world, and that's going to generate a whole new slew of apps that I can't even begin to think about. So if we can, let's go to the world of engagement. That's the next slide here. So I'm not too thrilled with the idea of engagement because it has, like every other definition, to Amber's point, workforce management. What does that really mean? Well, engagement is a little bit of everything to everybody, but I think it is now coming back to the idea that it's all about creating an environment of development. I'll call it preparedness. I'll come back and explain what I mean by that. And then leveraging the work-life balance. So we are finding that technology is at the heart of much of this. So we're seeing a lot of vendors creating truly career development types of software that puts the employee in charge of their career, giving them an insight to the organization. Where do I want to be? What do I need to do to get there? Components of learning, if you will, performance, internship, just a lot of different things in that regard. But we're finding that technology, again, is not quite mature, and so you're going to see some niche players come up with some very, very cool ideas and probably get absorbed. So I think the idea of this M&A situation, you're going to find HR technology is going to continue to be a really hot market. That takes me over to this idea of preparedness. A lot of firms are recognizing that the moment I get hired, my resume dies, and that really is not the way we should be looking at it. And in fact, to tell you the truth, I always tell people, keep your resume alive, not for your own next job, but if you will, for the benefit of those around you who may look at you for promotion. So we are going to start seeing aggregators of what I call the internet persona, who I am, where I've been, what I've done, where have I posted, things of that nature. So culling the information out of the internet. And I go back to Steve's internet, if you will, the platform or services, everything is a service, I'm sorry. I think that the internet is a great platform in its own right with a lot of rich content that somebody's going to figure out how to somewhat harness for the individual. So we're going to see things that I call the internet persona. And I think you're seeing employers starting to recognize we need to let workers become more individualized and be prepared for the next job, whether that's in the company or outside. And again, I go back to the idea of the contingent workforce. I may be someplace for 6 months and I'm gone, but I may be back in another year. So that's, I think, keeping our resumes alive throughout our whole career will become a very, very big thing. And then the idea of leveraging the work-life balance. There is a lot of good technology. In fact, we're using one today, if you will. The idea that we're reaching out to a lot of folks in one central place, presenting 3 or 4 individuals speaking about something. So the idea that technology can tie virtual teams together is very much becoming a commonplace perspective in companies. And I think that you're going to see that HR systems will continue to start opening up the idea that mobile applications, I can do my work, HR-related type of work, whether I'm a manager or an HR person or whatever, from anywhere on a mobile platform in Kenya if I need to. So those are the kind of things that we're seeing the technology really allowing to support people's lifestyle. I can be anywhere and do pretty much anything as I need to. The biggest stumbling block, I think, is the management perspective that you can do that. If I can see you, you must be working is not the right parable these days. So the last thing I want to mention is this idea of the new breed of technology thinking. So to play a little bit off of what Steve had said, mobile, everything's mobile now. And I think that people who shy away from a mobile platform will find themselves left in the dust in real short time. That the applications need to be highly intuitive, both appealing for the new generation, the gaming generation, as Steve said, but even for those folks like myself. I don't have an instruction manual for the apps I have on my phone. I just use them, and they're that intuitive. So there's no reason in the world that HR cannot be that way. They have to be certainly faster and accessible with highly specific functions. So you're going to see lots of little apps being built for very particular situations. And adaptable. They will be personalized. When Nove signs in, Nove's going to know that he's got the information that he wants to see and needs to see. And then integrated. That's the real key. And to Steve's point about this idea of integration, that is a huge, huge opportunity for the technology world. We'll see how many vendors are going to try to understand that they are not an island, and they'll have to integrate with others. So that's pretty much it. Thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Nov, for the fascinating comments. It's certainly interesting vision of the future and how it might look going forward. Okay, and last but certainly not least, Ed Colby, welcome, and I'll turn the floor to you.
Thank you, Ward. I appreciate it, and thank you all for joining us today. as you see, I've got a rather long bio there, and I like to call myself the old guy who's been there, done that in a lot of different ways. I categorize myself as a student and educator of management and technology. I've been very fortunate to have some really unique experiences across my entire career. I spent my first 20 years on the practitioner side, working in different industries, leading operational consulting groups, systems and development, application development groups. I actually spent a couple of years in HR and a general management training program early in my career. And I got to see every side of technology within several different industries. And about 20 years ago, I moved to the vendor side in capital management. As technology was really taken off of a new thing called employee self-service. I've worked with 4 startups in the space. One of them went Chapter 7 bankruptcy. I had another startup in the commercial insurance systems space back in the 70s that went Chapter 7. I've been in 2 organizations that went Chapter 11. And, you learn some really interesting experiences in terms of being with organizations like that. I've also been with 3 of the world #1 market leaders in their space here in the HCM technology space. So I've seen that side as well. As an internal guy on the vendor side, I've led solutions consulting organizations, professional services development, and I've done a whole hell of a lot of marketing and positioning and messaging in every company I've been with. So, as I said, student in management and technology, and here to share some of my observations with you. So, Ward, if you can push the next slide, please. So I thought I'd share a little information in terms of about the buyer and end user, who they are, who you're selling to when you're a provider of HCM or workforce management technology. And in terms of the reality and challenges of the buying cycle, in one word, it is a very complex market, as you've already seen. Both Amber and Steve and Nove have touched on a variety of players in the space. When you think about human resources, the functional organization, they are very broad. They're very squishy in terms of what they do and the service that they provide, but everybody knows they're there and you need them. It touches every employee in the organization. So when you think about their provisioning of services, which are very broad, you look at a typical large organization and their HR function, there are literally, and I was trying to think off the top of my head, how many different discrete functions exist in HR, and I could come up with around 10 discrete functional areas that all have their separate compliance requirements, all their separate functions, their technology, what they deliver, how they deliver it, how they manage the workforce, which categorically been called, every organization's most valuable asset. Unfortunately, with that reality, they're beset with a whole host of technology challenges, and because of the segmentation of the workforce, the segmentation of different companies, the players in this market are also very broad and segmented. And you've got industry specialists, you've got functional specialists, you've got best of breed, you've got generalist enterprise apps, you've got talent management suites, the suite providers, and it just makes it very, very overwhelming for the HR buyer to understand what's out there, keep abreast of it, and their maturity regarding the true strategic purpose and potential and value of their role has been something that's been discussed over the last 5 or 10 years. The whole question of, can HR get a seat at the table and viewed it with the full respect they deserve for trying to manage a workforce that meets the organization's needs. So their role is, very broad and squishy. The technology is everywhere, and it presents a true challenge to the seller. From a seller perspective, I've seen in the last 20 years, I've been doing more educating than really positioning and messaging. And you're evangelizing a new technology, a revolutionary thing that you're trying to sell. You're doing more evangelism work and educating than really differentiating initially. And the number one question is, how do I show the value of what I'm selling them? And then question, why me? So the cycle is often very long. The buying cycle can take, in many cases, 6 to 18 months, depending on the size of the organization, what their buying process is, and the breadth of applications they're looking for. And again, it goes from a best-of-breed niche solution for one functional area to an enterprise-type app that covers everything in HR and everything in the middle. And the reality of HR, when you're looking at capital expenditures and who gets the budget money in organizations, historically, HR has been bottom of the barrel, and who's getting that money. And other corporate needs are viewed as much more critical and much more important than the HR needs. So the buyers are often unsophisticated and overwhelmed by technology. And the other thing that makes it complicated is, unlike some of the other financial applications, supply chain, manufacturing, moving systems, credit systems that companies typically have, it is extremely difficult in many cases with many of these applications to measure the true direct value and return on investment of the technology. So the HR buyer has a tough time not only getting money, but convincing finance, the CEO of the operations and IT that it's worth the investment. So what do the buyers think they need and are looking for? I'll tell you, I've been very surprised and shocked, and it's possibly because of the complexity of the HR marketplace and the HR function. Most buyers are looking for instant shrink-wrapped plug-and-play solutions. And I guess we're getting closer there in the SaaS models But the point I'm trying to make is that they often are buying on features, functions, and technology. And we've been saying for years it's not about the technology. It's really about what do you need to solve your business needs, and how do you break through and get the right fit or the right shoe that fits the HR buyer and the organizational need. So some of the things they're looking for, and they should be looking for, is the security of their buying decision, the longevity and capability of the vendor, and the ability of technology to meet their business objective. And you always hear when you're a seller of HR technology when you go in, and maybe this is true in other industries and other functional areas, but I don't think to this extent. But we're different. You know, we have a different workforce. We have different compliance needs. We're different in every different way, and everybody thinks they need something different and they need customization. And that battle has been fought for 40 years. In all reality, HR is the same everywhere, except for some of the challenges they face with the moving of their assets in terms of their workforce, and be able to get that workforce and keep them working. That's the challenge. Not that they're really different in terms of what they offer. So the buyer is looking for compliance. HR is an organization function with compliance requirements of every type from every federal agency that you can look at to protect the employee. And it's a reality of life, and it is intense for HR. So a vendor has to show that they can comply with all the different requirements of every different industry, every different type of workforce. They're looking for. They often don't know if they're looking for transactional efficiency. You know, for the first 10 or 15 years, it was very difficult to convince HR buyers spend money on employee self-service or manager self-service. All they could see the value in it was maybe decreasing or reallocating our headcount. And we often fail to see the strategic value of HR technology in terms of freeing up available time for HR that can be put to other more productive uses in terms of acquiring, building, and developing a workforce. The strategic value of the information access to management and the time savings to management. And you know, it's funny, we're still fighting in many buyers the old prove that HR technology is more than just reducing headcount and cutting labor costs, and where do you get your productivity savings? Well, that's not really the true value and point of HR technology. I found in my experience that the buying decision, again, it gets back to the lack of sophistication of many of these buyers, is highly influenced by good marketing and good demos. You know, we've all seen smoke and mirrors demos. I've delivered some of them myself with new startup firms where, you know, you're praying that the demo doesn't break, and you're presenting a false front, react, and it just, you know, the sizzle and the fizz, and everybody goes, ooh, wow, ah, and yeah, that looks great. And then the next decision gets to be, okay, so price. And I've been lecturing technology vendors, the marketing side and the sales side, to sell on value. You certainly have to know your customer and know what their price point is. You have to understand they're buying on perception, promises, and price in many cases. So in terms of the buyer selection and decision process, as I previously stated, the state of the sophistication of the buyers is all over the map. Oftentimes in this buying decision, there are third-party consultants involved and industry influencers. There are a number of different sources of key industry influencers, consulting firms, research reports that the more sophisticated buyers will go to. Oftentimes there's a very formal, structured buying process. Multiple steps, and you end up in a product show and tell. I call it the bake-off or the throwdown. You know, how many notes does it take you to do this, and what does it look like? Obviously, when you're down to the weeds like that, it's a really difficult sell because most every vendor can check off the boxes and do that. So you do that, bring it up a level. So in just a summary, many fingers in the pie. This is often blocked to the decision makers, and you need to really understand, just in any selling role in any type of technology, is who's the key internal influencers and what's the selection decision criteria, and who really is the decision maker. Yes. Well, what I just said, who's the real decision maker? I end up coaching sales, technology guys and marketing guys. You've got to go high. You have to get to the C-level. You've got to get to this relationship, build it, and understand their level of sophistication. And then how much of an education effort do you have with them, and get into what their personal objectives are. The guy who's making the decision has some personal objective. And they're not often stated to the selection team. If you're blocked by the selection team, somehow you have to flesh that out, because that's where the real decision is going to be made. And oftentimes it's more an emotional decision than it is an objective decision. So how do I, as a vendor, as a sales guy, be the decision maker? And one of the most significant ways is, actually there's two real things. It's showing realistic value and return on investment by going through a business case and some kind of a value assessment that they can hang their hat on, and it's participatory with the business. And then, just like real estate, what's the three most important factors? Location. Well, I believe here in selling HR technology, it's differentiation, and you sell on value, not price. So if we can go to the next slide. So in terms of M&A market entry and exit considerations, I thought about this for a long time. Again, having seen the churn in this space over the last 20 years, that the same churn that Nov's seen and Steve had seen, and as Amber's even shown in terms of the activity, the marketplace is really tough to define in terms of how do you define HCM from WFM. That's really the question. And I think from when a new player is getting in, if they're smart, first they'll recognize the space is overwhelming. It's flooded. Players are coming from every perspective. And I think Nov mentioned this. All ends are moving toward the middle, and on the middle, everybody's trying to become broader. Particularly if they don't have a proprietary new revolutionary technology, if they're not an industry specialist or a functional specialist, if they don't cater to a certain market, everybody is looking to make a land grab and get bigger. And as we've seen, I couldn't help but think of the analogy when Amber was talking about one of the small companies valued at $45 million getting taken over by Cornerstone. It's just like a food chain in the ocean. You've got the algae by some, and then there's something else that's bigger that eats that, and then so on all the way up the food chain. And the number of players is increasing every day. There's new players, the new technologies coming from every different direction, and it's not just the domestic market any longer. You've got India's, and the players are of all types. And as Steve had mentioned, the focus and scope of their offerings varies. It could be just basic infrastructure. It could be database applications. It could be transaction stuff. It could be full application suites that get into either core HRMS, talent management, learning management, workforce management. It could be strategic applications that get into competency management, succession management, workforce planning, workforce analytics, and other sophisticated analytical decision support systems. It's all over the map, and you're seeing people come up everywhere, popping heads. And oftentimes, you see the acquisition activity, particularly those that have a good niche with one of the larger players in a hole that they need to fill. So the challenges entrants face really it depends on the scope of your offering. Almost everything in life, it turns out, it depends. There's no set answer for anything. And if you've got that new revolutionary technology or offering that's going to shake up the space, or is it just differentiating a different way of making the same mousetrap? That's going to be challenging and how you get in. If you've got a strategic barrier to entry or strategic window of opportunity to defend against competitive entry, you've got some time to get some traction. So the long-term exit objectives and strategy, what you want to get out of your investment in technology in terms of how long you want to be in the market, is certainly going to shape your entry strategy and approach creating awareness and differentiating and how and where you market and sell your technology. So the bottom line is, we're all trying to do the same thing: how to optimize the full productive capacity and the potential of what I call the human asset. So you've got to show why us. So to gain traction, you have to know yourself. You have to know who you are, why you're different, what your business value is. You have to know your competition and your marketing positioning and messaging. It's critical in this space. And you would be surprised at some of the companies I see coming in. They think they're building a brand new thing, and they just pause on it 20 years, and they fail. You've got to know how the game is played. This is a relationship base, and it's very small when you get deeply into it. You've got to target the key industry influencers and social channels and get them to evangelize and spread your religion and preach your gospel for you. You've got to show customers case testimonials and references here. It's a network industry, and you've got to show thought leadership. So in terms of the market exit considerations, I'm going through this quickly now, being conscious of time. You've got to treat it like any other relationship. Is your position strong? What you bring to the relationship? To me, you have to treat it like a marriage or a hiring decision. Even if it's a straight total asset sale and you're just looking to get out and divorce, relationship sale, you still have to look at how do we fit together. And I put it in the context of who really needs me, who loves me, who do I best complement and supplement, and who being the highest exponentially, as I call it, synergistic value. And that's how you see some of the biggies grabbing up these little small technology firms, the new startups to fill a certain niche, and why you see people going left and right in different directions in the space. And if you can demonstrate you've got a long-term roadmap and financial growth potential, obviously that's going to be good. But we've seen, and Amber can tell you, many firms that aren't showing any profits right now, and this is true of every industry and every technology. People are buying faith and potential. So I'll stop there.
Okay. Hey, great. Thanks, Ed. Some really useful insight there, especially on how to position yourself for potential exit. We've got just a couple of minutes left here. What I'd like to do, I've had several questions come in, and one of them I'd like to bounce to Steve. Steve, you may have seen the question come in across the line there. What is the impact of the gaming culture on HR technology? And I think you wanted to maybe bounce back to slide 29. Steve?
Yes, thank you, Ward.
Okay.
And a lot of what I want to talk to you about is kind of this, what does it mean to the future, and what does the gaming culture impact have upon the future? And number one, I think you're going to have, more affordable apps and more affordable products from a consumer standpoint, because it's going to be against the platform. I think really where everything is going to be is on the platform, and specifically from a gaming standpoint. Are you going to see gaming mechanisms being put into the various different products that we're seeing there? And for instance, Candy Crush employee development, is that a possibility? Plug and play talent management apps, faster innovation, return of best of breed. But really also, when you think about the gaming culture, what it's really doing is it's really pulling together a higher level of collaboration, a higher level of competition between employees. And to even what Nov said about the concept of contingent workforce, or even pushing it so far as the freelance workforce, you're going to have people where companies can put a problem out there with a bounty on it, and these teams can self-organize and attack that bounty and really deliver a functional solution for that company for a much lower cost than they would have to pay that team of engineers full-time salaries. So I think the gaming culture is really opening up the world, but also creating a lot better solutions. It will create a lot better solutions for the world, and will do it through self-organization, self-organizing teams. They may meet somebody from Call of Duty Online that they know is a fantastic Java programmer, and boom, there you go. These are the types of things I really see the gaming culture, affecting.
Ward, this is Nov. If I could make a very quick comment to Steve's comment, we are seeing a little bit of gaming showing up. It is still what I'd call relatively rudimentary. I'll call it cartoonish, but there are a couple of vendors today. There's one out there called Logiserve and one called Persona Labs that quite literally in the assessment world actually game the whole assessment. So you're actually being presented problems in a more game-like environment with choices, just more click and drag type of stuff. But nonetheless, so the thought process, as Steve has mentioned, it's a gaming situation. And it really is an engaging, very appealing. So whoever had asked that question, I think you're going to see the gaming really take a hold in the mentality of how things are being presented.
Okay, good. Thanks, Nov. We've got time for just one more, and then we're going to have to end this session. It's been great dialogue here, guys. Thanks for the questions from the audience. One of them came in for you, Nov. The observation was there's lots of these technologies tend to come and go. Are these really fads or trends, or are these really serious?
Well, and I've been around long enough to see some technologies become fads, if you will. The touch screen was something that came and went in record time. But I do believe what we're seeing is this is going to stick, and it's really being driven more from the consumer side. What we see and what we use today as consumers, we are expecting to see in our work life. And so I think that will make it a more than just a fad. It'll become a standard.
Yeah. Okay. Well, with that note, I think we're going to close. Justine, I assume we're going to have the slides available and the recording available within, a few days? Or in a day? So if anyone wants to download the deck and or revisit this webinar, they can do so on the WFS site. I'd also welcome anyone that would like to direct any further questions to myself or any of the panelists. Please feel free to email me, or you can reach out directly to Steve or Nov or Ed. I'm sure they'd welcome the opportunity to talk with you. We do have a couple of questions that did not get answered, and we'll get back to those parties after the session. So with that, I'd really like to thank our panelists and our participants today and all of our guests, and I thank you very much for joining us. And I hope you'll attend one of our future events, either WFS events such as the Spotlight Series, and or if you're interested in learning more about software M&A, Quorum Group, we do a very intense schedule of M&A education conferences and you can visit our webpage for those. Thanks, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.